Hello, this is the Animation Fanatic here. Today I am back with another book, The Alienist. You know, we often take it for granted that our police officers use a lot of things like to solve crimes like fingerprints, psychology, a lot of modern methods, interviewing family, getting into the mind of the criminal, criminal mind stuff, all of forensics, all the things you see on TV, all the things that are used in real life. We often take that for granted, even in good books like Kathy Reichs's books of Temperance Brennan. We take that kind of stuff for granted, and well, this is a book that takes us back to a time when this wasn't commonplace. Actually, it's funny because in this book they talk about fingerprints, and they're like, well, that's not scientifically admissible. I don't know about that. And fingerprints are now sort of the make or break thing for a lot of people when it comes to cases. I mean, if your fingerprints are there, you did it. It's the thought process. But this is not like that. This is a book set. It actually starts out in the early 20th century, but then it's these two friends, not necessarily relating, but remembering, I guess you could say, their old story, or one of them, John Moore, remembering a case that he worked on back in the late 1800s. He's a police reporter, and he and this prominent psychologist, this prominent doctor, who's got very unorthodox methods, as well as two police officers and a police secretary, a female police secretary who wants to be a police officer, team up to catch this serial killer. They're brought together by Theodore Roosevelt, of all people, who is working as police commissioner at this time, to catch this serial killer who has been murdering young male prostitutes, young boy prostitutes. And they're all brought together, and they're using these different methods, these pioneering methods, really, to discover who this murderer is. And at the same time, they're kind of being pursued by people who want to keep it all hush hush. They don't want them to succeed. They don't want them to do anything. They're just like shh. This was a very good book. If you've ever seen the show Murdoch Mysteries, this is a lot like that. Murdoch Mysteries, I should review that sometime, is a show where we have a Canadian guy who does investigations like that, using more modern methods in a time when they were strange and sort of unconventional. But this is a much gorier and darker version of Murdoch Mysteries. Not that Murdoch Mysteries is any walk in the park. People get murdered, people get stabbed, people like molested or raped and stuff. I don't know about raped, actually. Abortion. But this is a far more gruesome version of Murdoch Mysteries, if you could call it that. But it's a very good plot. You don't know. You can't say, well, I think it's this guy who's the killer, because you don't know until the end. You're left guessing, and that's really effective. It's an entertaining story. The author himself is very entertaining. It makes good use of Theodore Roosevelt. He's a secondary character, yes, but he's used effectively throughout the book, and you get a good, if you're an admirer of his, or if you're interested in his history, this is an interesting book because it gives you a look into who he was, which was kind of a blowhard, kind of an egomaniac, but also a well-meaning one at that. He means well. He just doesn't always know how to control himself. The scene with his kids is funny too. Well, this is an interesting look at just this case and just the ways they go about trying to find it, and it's an interesting plot. I question the use of people sort of pursuing them, trying to keep it all hush-hush. That was interesting at first, but after a certain point, it just kind of got annoying because people kept going after them, and it was like, it just didn't make sense, and yeah. The killer, when they finally discover everything, you're like, oh, are they going to find it? They got it. They got the information. Wait a minute. You can put some of the pieces together, but it's interesting when they finally get to all of it and finally lay everything out. The killer himself doesn't really spend too much time in the book. I would almost say he's a little bit of a disappointment. You'll get what I mean when you read the book, but he kind of rolls over after, and he's just kind of shoved to the side. He's almost shoved to the side. But really, yeah. So besides John Moore, the police detective, the not police detective, police reporter. He's sort of our everyman. He's the voice of reason. He's the person who takes us through this journey. And excuse me. I'm sorry about that. He's the everyman for this. He's us if we were thrown into this kind of thing, and we see this whole investigation through his eyes. Besides him, there's Kressler, who is this prominent psychologist who's got unorthodox methods. You know, he's looking to more how does our childhood shape us? And a lot of this book is like, how does our childhood shape who we become? How does it make us who we are? Can we really determine by ourselves who we are, who we become? But or does our childhood make us into what we are? There's also the two police detectives who don't get too much character. They're two Jewish guys who are kind of a little they're kind of funny back and forth brother kind of things, but they're trying to use modern methods and sort of move past the old sort of good old boy police force. And then there's I forgot her name, but there's the woman who's the police secretary who's trying to move past not only the good old boys club but the sexism that's rampant in those days and just trying to adjust to all that. But it's an interesting book. There's twists and turns, there's mystery, there's murder, there's love, there's no sex. So if you were looking for that, this is the book for you. But there's a lot of other things. There's some action, there's some drama, there's personal. Oh, what am I saying? There's no sex. There is sex in here, but you'll see what I mean. But it's an entertaining book. It's really cool to read. If you've seen Murdoch Mysteries, or if you just like these forensic books or mystery books, if you like something like that, this is the book for you. This is your kind of book. That's all I can say about it. Really, this was a fun read.